Hello and welcome to this history, government, politics, etc. hangout. The first one was on, and I've done a lot of history, government, politics hangouts in the past. I started a new format where people could join. It's more interesting that way to me, get a little interaction going. The first one was on November 7th, 2017. This is November 30th. I was going to wait till December, but December 1st, I won't have time to do it. And today I do have time to do it. And then with Christmas holidays, New Year's Eve situations going on, other things, so you may never get to it in December, right? I will open up Google Hangouts so people could contact me if they want to join. I know a lot of our English friends, Craig at Kent Beer Reviews, Harry, he should be off of work. And Deans and especially Peter, who's really into the political angle, I think would maybe like to join. And of course, the American friends, most of them are probably still at work. So you can connect, send me a request, and I'll get with you. It was raining earlier. I still have to go walk half a mile. I did 1 mile already. I'm going to do the hangout with Schlitz beer. We can get these 6 packs of pint cans for, what's the price? Oh, wait, let me jump over to this. $4.70, I think it's $4.71 after tax, something like that. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Okay, so I was thinking about term limits. Now, I used to have a web blog called Right Wing Political Solutions. And then somebody said, why'd you get rid of it? I said, well, no one read it. Like, what's the point of doing a blog that no one reads? Oh, I mean, maybe 2 or 3 people a month, but I'm going to write all of that. I have to think it out, and no one reads it. So that didn't make a lot of sense. And I had written a book, and nobody wanted to publish it. And I was just called Right Wing, the Beginner's Guide to Right Wing Politics. Okay, so I still have the manuscript. And then my reviewing partner, Paul from Texas, he had written the intro to that. But anyway, so I just figured people like to watch things and listen to things these days. They're not so much into reading, okay? So about once a month, I figured I could stand to do this. Some people are going to hate it. You know, they're going to say, I like your channel for beer reviews. I'm going to unsubscribe, and I hate you. And some people get mad when I do wine or liquor. The channel is called my name. It's my name. Louisiana Beer Reviews is part of the channel. That is not the name of the channel, okay? So it's not technically dedicated to that. Although I know the channel description is Honest Liquor Reviews, Honest Beer, Wine, and Liquor Reviews since 2010. And that is the main focus of the channel. But that is not the only thing I'm interested in. It's probably not the only thing you're interested in. Okay? And I like to study history, politics, government. I've been doing that all my life. I did that for a career teaching. I retired from that. The kid said, well, you like doing this, huh? I said, yeah, it's easy money because I would be talking about it anyway. So I may as well get paid. I mean, you might hate it, but I'm just going to be just addressing the topics anyway, so I might as well make money out of it. And they generally were favorable towards it. Okay, so today I was going to talk about term limits. Now we hear this a lot, term limits, term limits. Used to hear it a lot more, but we still hear that thing popping up. And Schlitz smells good. It's got a little spiciness to it, right? From the little higher than average hop action going on. I think that to a large extent you get conservative, and that usually means neoconservative people talking about we need term limits. We need term limits to keep the bad people out of office or limit them to only 2 terms. We do have term limits for the president since 1951 with the amendment. A president can only be elected twice. And then now we got this passed in the city of New Orleans and in the state of Louisiana. We've been having term limits for governor. You can only be elected in 2 consecutive terms. And then people want to do it for the Congress. We could not do that for Congress, House, or Senate by state law or even federal statute, okay? They could not pass a law saying Congress is term limited. Just like they could not pass a law in the 1990s saying that the president has a line item veto power. Because the Supreme Court yeah, I know they're wrong a lot. Although, but that's another thing, the 14th Amendment, we could make the argument that they're not technically wrong. But they were correct when they said you cannot the Congress cannot turn over powers to the president that the president does not have. They cannot give their power to another branch unless there was a constitutional amendment. So if you wanted to give the president a line item veto, you would have to pass it through a constitutional amendment. Same thing with term limits. You could not term limit Congress, House or Senate, without a constitutional amendment. And people will post that. I noticed that a lot on Facebook, right? That's what everybody looks at all day. I try to limit it to only 30 minutes scrolling through each day. That's what I'll watch the clock. I'll say 4:30. Okay, I'll start going through it. At 5, I cut it off because it's just a bunch of junk usually, right? Look what I cooked. Now I like to see that. I mean, that's nice. Look what I cooked. Or my child is sick. And it's personal interaction things, right? Pray for my mother. She's ill. I mean, that's good. And you get to see people you never would have seen before without social media. People you knew 25 years ago, you lost track. You couldn't track them down. So it's good for that. Like these guys that used to be in a comic book club with me, the Southeast Louisiana Comic Book Club. We reconnected on Facebook. We talk about comic books, you know. That's nice. But then, you know, they got some people, I'm not one of them too much. I'll just post links to like interesting articles I read. Like an article today I read about Abraham Lincoln's view of secession versus Jefferson Davis's view of secession and the Union. And I thought it was a very interesting article. So I posted it and maybe people could read it or not read it, whatever, and comment on it, whatnot. But I'll see people posting on Facebook. Oh, and there's the political people, you know, they're always posting something political, maybe 5, 6 times a day. I mean, some people post so much, you just got to unfollow them. It's not because you don't like the people. It's just that's all you see, you know. And then one lady I'm friends with, I went to kindergarten with her, even back then. And but I can't follow her because she always posts these horrible pictures of abused animals. She's like into the Humane Society and help this dog. You know, I was like, I can't help this dog. You know, I don't want to get on there every day and see some beat up animal. And it's a horrible thing, you know, and she might think he doesn't like me. No, I can't stand seeing that every day. Boppin' TV. Now I'm going to get to the comments in a minute. When we get to the question and answer, okay? So then I'll make comments sometimes. They'll say, do you support term limits? Please like and share. You know that thing on Facebook, like and share. I'm like, I'm not going to like it. I might like it, but I'm not going to share it because I didn't do chain letters in the 80s, chain mail. I didn't do chain emails in the 90s and 2000s, and I'm not doing chain Facebook, chain posts. But I'll make comments sometimes like, I don't support term limits. I'll just make the comment, I don't support term limits. Okay, so I'll tell you why I don't support term limits. All right. You say, well, we got bad politicians. Okay, I agree with that. And we need to limit them. I agree with that. But I would say we need to limit them with our voting. You see, we have bad politicians because we have bad voters. You know what I'm saying? The people in office reflect the people voting. So if you elect them and they're bad, and then you keep electing them and they're bad, crooked, what do you call it? Demagogues type people. Okay, well, that's a reflection of the voters. So if you term limit them, you're just going to get another group of bad office holders. So my point would be maybe you need to look at voting qualifications. That's another topic. I wrote an article about that on Right Wing Political Solution. So I would not, this is my personal opinion, I would not support term limits for the president. I would like to repeal that amendment. Can't remember the number. Was it 22nd Amendment? When I used to teach high school history, kids would say, I can't remember dates and numbers, like which number amendment. I said, that's nice. It's not that important. The important thing is you know what the amendment was. I mean, okay, if you know that an amendment was passed in 1917, that's good, but that's not that important. It's important that you know what the amendment was and how it affected the government. I mean, you don't need to know reference material. You can look that up in a book, right? You need to know what happened and why it happened and what effect it had. That's how I used to teach history. What happened, why, and what effect. Not to remember a catalog of dates and names. Of course, you have to know the name to know the story. So, right? Okay. So I would advocate repealing the I believe it, like I said, 22nd Amendment that limits the president. Let them get elected as many times as they want. If Bill Clinton could have run for a third term in 2000, sure, let him run. 2004, let him run. Obama, 08, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, whatever. I don't mind that because that is what the people want. Now, a lot of people say, I love democracy. Okay, you love democracy, but you want to limit the people's vote. So, do you really love democracy? Do you love responsibility? Do you love responsibility? Would you maybe like to put restrictions on voting qualifications? That might be an example of loving responsible democracy, right? We don't let everyone fly a plane. Here comes Kansas City Southern. Now you say, yeah, but the plane. You say, well, the plane could crash and it could hurt people. That's different. Well, the government can be tyrannical and be grasping and confiscatory, right? And seize your money and waste it and be warmongering and imperialistic, right? So that can hurt people, right? A plane crashing due to an incompetent pilot is bad, very bad, dangerous. Or I should say a plane with an incompetent pilot is dangerous and bad. A country with an incompetent leader is dangerous and bad. Atom bombs are bad. Planes crashing are bad, right? So don't use that argument. Now, BLF 450 says beer talk is much better. Just saying, buddy. It's much better for whoever's watching. Okay? Some people love beer talk. I do. To an extent. I mean, after a while, you get tired of it. You want to talk about other things. And I like to talk about beer pretty much all the time. On the other hand, I like to talk about history, government, and politics, etc. pretty much all the time. Now that's a little dicier subject because you get some real, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say that because you can make a lot of enemies just talking about beer, which seems preposterous. Beverages, you know, oh, I'm so angry at you because of a beverage. I'm going to unfriend you. That might reflect your problems more than my problem. Now, I'll give you a guess. Guess how many people I have unfriended over politics? Let's take a guess. Oh, yeah, you got it. None. But it's dicey, right? I mean, I can sit back and be relaxed and get into a heated political, religious, government argument and just be fine, you know, fine. Friends, you know, I don't get angry. Other people are not that way. You've been to enough Thanksgiving dinners to notice that. My father doesn't get, he's like me, he doesn't get angry at people, but he's much more unrestrained, let's say. He'll say many more things out loud that he's thinking than I would say out loud than I'm thinking, right? You know what I mean? Like there's things you think and you say, I ought not say that. If he thinks it, he's saying it. Which gets a lot more people angry, you see. So if he had a channel, I mean, it would be just a bubbling cauldron of controversy. Of course, he wouldn't care. Believe me, he just doesn't care. He's like Nicky in Casino. He doesn't care. He just doesn't care. He would be funny to have one of these hangouts. He's on some of the videos I've made, and it's really funny. So that's the thing about term limits. I don't support term limits. I don't support term limits. I will never support term limits, ever. You hear what I'm saying? They violate the voter's choice. We need better voters, maybe. Okay, I'll go along with that. Term limits do not solve a problem. They are an attempt to solve a symptom instead of the cause, right? It's like saying, well, we need to stop runny noses. No, we need to stop what's causing the runny nose, okay? Term limits don't stop bad politicians. And what if you have a good politician who's voting correctly, who's not tyrannical, right? Who's not confiscatory, who wants to help? You know, there are a handful like that. And you term limit the guy or the lady. What have you achieved? You got rid of a good politician because of this arbitrary law. And that's the problem with the law. A term limit is a capricious, arbitrary law. You're just putting limits on the office holder for no real good reason, in my opinion. Okay, so I cannot support those. So that's like a topic I wrote about on my old blog that I deleted. Okay, so in the last hangout, I was introducing this series, which will be about once a month. I mean, I could do it once a day, you know, really. I mean, I don't have time, obviously, but people would get so angry. But so that's that. Now, there's so many other topics we could talk about over the coming months. Confederate monuments, warfare, right? Viewpoints of war, international relations, alliances, the danger or the benefit of alliances, military alliances, free trade versus restrictive trade, or we should say protectionism, right? You could use that term. Secession, going back to the Confederate monuments, idea of secession, like the British are seceding from the European Union, right? Slovakia seceded from Czechia, right? So that whole conception. We could talk about civil rights laws or anti-discrimination laws. How should we look at those? I mean, you could just talk about so many topics. So that's it for that. Term limits, I oppose term limits. I don't know what you think. I'd be curious to see what people say. Whatever you want to write. Like I say, if you want to join the Hangout, like literally join the Hangout face to face. Now I've got some people that don't like me. We all have people that don't like us. You're this and that. You are such and such. You are such and such. That's fine, you know, but come on air. You should come on air and we can hang out and talk about that. Anyone can join if you have decorum and respect. That's all you need. And you let other people talk. Well, that's part of the respect. I've had people join Hangouts in the past, beer, wine, liquor, whatever, but they wouldn't stop talking. Just talk. Now take turns. The one guy, he said, you know, you kicked me out for no reason. I said, no, it was obvious no one was going to be able to talk. It wasn't because of you and your antics. We like antics. Okay, so now let's look at some live chat comments. Boppin TV or Bopin TV, who I don't know who this is. He says, quote, wait, that doesn't make sense. He put a quote in the wrong spot. Okay, he says, John Wayne once said, quote, I believe in white supremacy until blacks are educated to a point of responsibility. Yeah, I've heard people say that. And it might be true. I think I heard him saying that. Wasn't that in a 1976 interview? Why did you tweet that? Me? I'm not on Twitter. How could I tweet that? I've never once repeated that quote in my life. So you got the wrong guy. I'm not on Twitter. I don't know who would tweet that. My interest in Twitter is zero. So I don't know what you're talking about. Sorry. You got somebody else in mind. You're thinking of somebody else. And what John Wayne said in 1976 has no relationship to this Hangout whatsoever, really. BLF 450 says, beer talk is much better, just saying, buddy. Right. Well, I mean, you know, it's a balancing act, right? You're going to attract people with history, government, history, politics, etc., and you're going to chase others away. That's part of the game. That's part of social interaction, in fact. Topi Aaron says, sup. Oh, just talking about history, government, and politics. All right. So, term limits, that's that. I'm going to give a few minutes for any question and answer. There may not be any. People are at work. If you have any questions, I'll try to give you an answer. Now, I've just got a comment and 2 questions, and I gave answers. So we've got a few minutes. So if you have questions, I'll answer them. Am I an expert on government history and politics? I'm not an expert, okay? Although, yes, I probably know more than the average person just because of studying it more. But to use the term expert is sort of got to question that. And we're hearing a lot about North Korea. This would be an interesting topic to discuss down the road. I know what I think about it. I don't know what other people think. I have some ideas. There was one beer reviewer. He doesn't actually review beer anymore. He told me, well, I got a lot of stuff recorded back a year ago. He said he had heart problems. The doctor said, you can't drink anymore and take this medicine. You just cannot do it. So he told me, that's it. Beer's over for the foreseeable future. and he had talked to me last year. We ought to get together and do these topic hangouts like what I'm doing now. But he only did it once or twice, and I had a feeling it wasn't going to develop really into anything. I mean, I went along with it, but I didn't see it really developing. And I'm not one to press the issue really for that kind of stuff, because he wasn't lying about it. I just knew he wasn't going to stick with it, so I didn't push it. You know, I would only press the issue if I thought somebody was lying. Then I would press the issue. You know what I mean? Just to kind of like give them the business. I can't stand lying. You know, people lying when they say they want to do it, but they really don't, and they're just lying. That I hate. Okay. Well, that's about it. I think for part 3, and it could be an emergency hangout, you know, if like some big thing happens in the world, we could talk about it, right? But I think for January, like I said, once a month, it's about all the audience could take. Like, although I said I could take many times a week, but oh, and by the way, my most popular history, government, and politics video ever was the Holy Roman Empire. I get comments at least once a week about that. You would say, the Holy Roman Empire, people really watch it? Incredible. Thousands of people, thousands of views. I mean, you would think, who would watch it? But it's amazing. I think I'd like to look at, I mean, term limits is like small potatoes, you know, that's obviously not that big of a deal. Although I do like to say I don't support it. I would really like to get into some more hard-hitting topics like anti-war, anti-imperialism. That's more heavy-hitting, right? That can really be a flashpoint. Anti-discrimination legislation, then you really get people starting to act out. Okay, now here's some comments. Jason Voorhees says, Ronald, your Holy Roman Empire video actually shows up with documentaries when someone types Holy Roman Empire, laugh out loud. Right, like you do a search, Holy Roman Empire, and it comes up. Yeah, that was an unexpected thing because I just did it, and I said, ain't nobody going to want to listen to that. And it was about, what, an hour? And I had some maps I showed, and I did it without notes, by the way, without notes, by the way. That's usually how I taught, without notes to a large extent. Alex the Beer Master says, hey, Ron, will you ever talk about Huey Long, the former governor of Louisiana? Oh, and then Jason says it's like one of the top 3 to 5 results when you do a search. You're talking about on YouTube, right? Or Google. Hey, that's pretty cool, you know. And I thought it was a great video, not because of me. It was a great video because the topic. People say, oh, the United States is an old country. It's been around for 241 years. Wow, big whoop. The Holy Roman Empire was around for like 1,000 years, literally like 1,000 years. That's an old country. Okay. England, been around since 1066. Actually, before that. Over 1,000 years. Well, almost 1,000 years. Well, it's older than 1,000 years. It's just 1066 is the current dynasty, really. The current family with some, you know, sub dynasties, right? Plantagenet and, you know, Tudor. And, I mean, Plantagenet and the Tudor and the Stuarts and the Hanover, Saxe-Coburg, Gotha, the current dynasty. He says, hey, do you know what happened to Mark Sanderson? I think his channel was called Video Beer Reviews. And yes, I meant YouTube, laugh out loud. Yeah, his channel got canceled for some reason. Now, they say it was without warning. I guess that's possible, but my experience is that they give you a lot of warnings before they kill your channel. I used to love watching that channel, man. But he's still around. They do those hangouts about once a week. It's like, I think they call it Share a Beer. I never watched that stuff, but I always see his face on there. So he's still around, yeah. He had that nice house in Atlanta, right? Remember, he's always working in the yard, and it was really pretty. He apparently had a lot of money. He had a really good job, or has a really good job. Okay, so back to Alex. Will you ever talk about Huey Long, the former governor? I'll talk about him now. I think he was a dictator, a Mussolini type. You know what I mean? He was like a proto-dictator. He was the governor from what, 1920? 24 to 30. Let me think about that. He was a U.S. senator. He wasn't the governor that long, but while he was a senator from what, 30 to 35 when he was assassinated, he basically ran Louisiana from his Senate office. He was in the state capitol more than the governor was N-O-E. Yeah, you know, Huey Long was sort of like I said, a Mussolini, Hitler type, fascist, socialist, communist, maniac, arch criminal type person. Very menacing, you know, like a nefarious person. But he was smart. You know, most of these people are smart. Huey Long was a sort of like a genius. You know, he grew up in Wynn Parish, North Louisiana, the Anglo part of the state, Anglo Louisiana, you know, Anglo America. And we were part of the Long family dynasty up until the 80s when Gillis Long died. He was a congressman, and we were in his district here. It stretched from like North Louisiana down here because Louisiana's congressional districts used to be very gerrymandered. And you might remember Russell Long, his son, who was a senator for so long. His brother, Earl Long, who was governor 4 different times. Huey was, to a large extent, self-educated. He couldn't make it in high school because he got kicked out. He was so bad. His behavior was so bad. But he was one of these people that knew everything, and he would read a lot. He would like show up to teachers, and he wouldn't listen to the teachers. He was just disruptive, which is basically a reflection of his entire life. And he was an odd person, sort of like Mussolini and Hitler. Like, he was a strange loner. He had few friends, but he had this bizarre guru type teacher. You know what I mean? Like this guru, like a Obi-Wan Kenobi guy, influencing him as a young man. This like radical socialist guy up in Wynn Parish. Kind of like the town agitator. And it influenced Huey Long, so he started in his teen years to believe in socialism. So in the let's see, he was born in 1890. So like in the early 1900s, he became like this, like Mussolini, like a radical socialist. Power to the people, right on. We're going to take down the rich and all of that. Okay. So then Huey Long was a traveling salesman, right? He went around the Southwest, like Shreveport, Louisiana, Texarkana, Arkansas, and Texas, Oklahoma area, the Southwest, South Central Southwest, selling encyclopedias. But he read them the whole time, like he would read the encyclopedias. And then while he was doing that, he read law books, just like read books about the law. Okay, read law books. Okay, so he went to Tulane University, which back then it was inexpensive. He got a scholarship. He was smart, you know, but you can still get a scholarship to Tulane if you know somebody. Yeah, he still appears on Share a Beer, says Bum Frump. That's right, with Joe D. He hosts a semi-regular night show, photo share and discussion on his own channel, Mark's Photography Spot. Oh, okay, I didn't know that. Back to Huey Long for a few minutes. He went to Tulane. Now, you know, Tulane is buttoned down, uptown New Orleans, sort of like Ivy League. You know what I mean? Tight. Hold on a second. The Rex Parade, was it the Plimsoll Club or whatever that club is, you know, like the ultimate insiders of New Orleans. And so they looked down on this country bumpkin from Wynn Parish, like this idiot moron, this uneducated buffoon. Well, of course, when he went to Tulane, he was disruptive, you know, asking questions all the time, challenging the professors and everything. This is around 1918, and they couldn't stand him, you know. Of course, when he would challenge them, he always had the right answers, right? Because like I said, he read these law books when he was on the road traveling. So they finally, after a year, they said, look, we couldn't stand him. They said, if you pass the law exam, we'll just give you the damn degree. You know, you don't have to go to law school. He said, I'll pass that. That's child's play. I don't need to go. I don't need to go to your stinking law school anyway. I know more than y'all. So of course he got the exam. He's writing these long, drawn out arguments. They just were stunned. You know, when they read his answers, they just were stunned. They said, oh, hell, give him the degree, get him out of here. This guy's a genius, you know. So he was sort of like that. A genius, but an evil genius, right? Sort of like Mussolini. So, and he in many ways modeled his career on Mussolini when he got into Louisiana politics. He got elected governor, and then he was the radical socialist government, share our wealth. Now, he supported Roosevelt for president in 1932. He was like out there supporting Roosevelt. But then he very quickly fell out with Roosevelt. He didn't like Roosevelt after a year or two because Roosevelt was not nearly radical enough for Huey Long. You know, Huey Long, it's sort of like when Hitler got into power, the SA, the SA, the storm battalions, you know, the guys that helped him get in power, they said, okay, you know, you're in power now. We want this communistic government, seize all the property and give it to the people and all this. Because you had people that were supporting the National Socialist German Workers' Party who were like, many of them former communists, but they tended to be in the SA, the storm battalions. And they began to revolt against Hitler because he wasn't nearly communistic enough. And they say, oh, you're just a corporatist. You're in cahoots with the big businessmen. And the same thing happened with Huey Long. He said, he said, Roosevelt is a corporatist. He's in cahoots with the big business. He's fake. He's just like the Republicans. And remember, Huey Long used to tell the story about high papillorum and low papahyrum, right? Talked about the old patent medicine. And that's his famous story about how the Republican Party wasn't a dime's bit of difference from the Democratic Party. And he talked about how they used to sell a patent medicine called high papillorum and low papahyrum. And he said that's how the Democrat and Republican parties were. He said, well, when you ask the salesman, is the high papillorum different from the low papahyrum? And they say, oh, yes, certainly. Definitely. He said, when they make the high papillorum, they take this tree, certain tree, and they skim the bark off from the top down, and then they cure the bark and make the medicine, high papillorum. He said, now, with the low papahyrum, which is a considerably different medicine, they take that same exact tree and they skin the bark from the ground up, then they cure it, make the medicine. He said that was the difference between the Democrat and Republican Party. So then, you know, Huey Long wanted the Share Our Wealth program, SOW, sow, you know, a female pig, to share our wealth, where they would limit all Americans to a certain income level, which would be, I think, $1 million. You could only own $1 million, or maybe it was 3 million, whatever. All other wealth would be seized by the government and shared with the population, right? So there would be a car in every driveway, a chicken in every pot, and every man would be a king, but no one would wear a crown. Sounds like something we've heard about before, right? Bolshevism, communism. And so he was very radical, and he ran Louisiana like a dictatorship, and it was very grim. It was sort of like a Venezuela. He was sort of like a Francisco Maduro, Fidel Castro type, that type of guy. His brother was similar to him and a genius like him, and his brother was mentally ill, and he wasn't quite as radical in his approach, and so he got a lot of things done that were more not hard sell, but soft sell, right? Same kind of socialist type thing, but on a much softer sell approach. And so that was Huey Long's Share Our Wealth. So even Roosevelt was alarmed by Huey Long, because Roosevelt said, well, this guy's dangerous. He's a proto-Hitler, a proto-Mussolini. And you had other radicals back in the 1930s too, like Coughlin's father, Coughlin. Coughlin was a Hitler supporter, didn't like Jews, thought there was some kind of problem with international finance capitalism, conspiratorial activity. And Huey Long did tend to believe that as well. And, you know, many socialists will say that. You had some other radical groups with, what was that? Townsend's money system. That's some kind of money system. I can't remember the name of it. Huey Long was assassinated in 1935. My grandmother was telling me she went to the funeral. She was right there in Baton Rouge when it happened. So she said, we went to the funeral, and it was so hot. She just remarked about how hot it was that day. And they saw him laying in the coffin. You know, they all love Huey Long, because people in Louisiana are like most people, are ignorant, you know, and they say, I've talked to so many old Louisiana people, oh, that man helped the poor people. He tried to help the children. And I don't argue with them. I just say, oh, okay. And I'll try to tell him, but he was like an evil dictator, right? You can't tell him anything, you know. And anyway, they kind of knew Huey Long, and I know people that knew. I knew people that knew him. I knew a guy that picked him up at the airport. He had pictures in his house. He picked Huey Long up at the airport, and my grandmother's cousin was the governor, Governor Lesh, after Huey Long in 1939. He went to prison. He got pardoned by Truman, who was known to be associated with the Kansas City organized crime syndicate, but anyway, and Freemasonry, I believe, Scottish Rite. But Huey Long was bad news in a bucket. You know what I mean? The guy was bad news. If you ask me about it, I'm telling you, he was bad news. Earl was crazy, not as menacing though. So Earl Long, who died in 1960, was mentally ill with probably bipolar disorder or manic depression. He told his brother at a rally one time, "You never did anything for me," because Huey Long said, I did something for everyone in this state." And Earl Long said, "You never did anything for me." He said, "I sure did, Earl. I built the finest mental hospital in the country right there in Mandeville, Louisiana." They said Earl went berserk, tried to charge the stage. They were brothers, but they did not get along. Heroin Money says, "What does Asiago Parmesan pair with?" Oh, well, broccoli, of course, and veal. Okay, well, that's it. We got to talk about Huey Long, the proto-communist, socialist, fascist, dictatorial maniac. Yeah, he built a bridge, a lot of bridges. He built the Huey Long Bridge in Baton Rouge, the first bridge across the Mississippi River in Louisiana, and the Huey Long Bridge in Jefferson Parish. Also, well, maybe it was the second, a year later or a year before, bridge. And he built a lot of highways like US Highway 61, Airline Highway. Yeah. Mussolini built the first housing projects. Mussolini drained the swamps. Mussolini fought the mafia and shut down organized crime. Huey Long didn't do that. He embraced organized crime. Organized crime loved Huey Long, by the way. But they were still bad, right? It was still bad. Bad. In my opinion. Now, you might say, well, if you were a good socialist, you'd love Huey Long. Yes, and I might love Francisco Maduro and Daniel Ortega and Fidel Castro as well. That's true. You got me there. Alex, the beer master, says, "Thank you, Ron, for talking about Huey Long for me. Thank you very much." Oh, well, you're welcome. I like to talk about Huey Long, as long as I'm talking bad about him. Oh, well, such is life. All right, so in about a month, give or take a few days, it's not a written in stone type of situation. We'll talk about his government, history, politics, etc., part 3. And it won't be term limits and it won't be Huey Long, but maybe it'll be war, imperialism, foreign relations. The possibilities are endless. Thank you, folks, and you have a great and wonderful evening. Well, I should say afternoon and then evening.